Looking at the NFC South, I'll be fully transparent. I don't know that I really loved what any of the teams did here in the 2025 NFL draft. I just don't know that I could say that, wow, I was over the moon or super buzzed or excited about any of these teams' performances. I think there's some pockets and stretches of some solid picks. I think there's one team that overall performance was a little bit of cut above the rest, but even then, I wouldn't necessarily call it overwhelming, but probably more on the solid side. So let's take a look at what these teams did in the NFC South in this 2025 NFL draft. And I'm going to start with the New Orleans Saints. Um, you know, the thought of drafting Kelvin Banks Jr. at 9, like it makes sense. You're investing in the trenches. You just had Ryan Ramczyk, your former right tackle, retire. So, yeah, there you go. But this is a team in the Saints that badly needs an identity, and they've invested a lot of high premium picks in offensive line over the years. And you look at the past few years, what exactly has been the fucking payoff of that? I'm just saying, right? And now you sit there and you do that again at pick 9. Like it feels like an unnecessarily high allocation of resources into one position with minimum payoff. And then you turn around in round 2, and now mind you, this is before we found out, like we did the other day, that Derek Carr is retiring due to injury. He's flat out retiring. 11 years, didn't really win shit, but made himself over $200 million. I salute you, sir. They come into round 2, and you're like, okay, maybe they're going to take a Shedeur Sanders here, or maybe they'll go with a Jalen Milroe, and instead they go with a Tyler Shuck, who's going to be 26 this year. And you're going to say, like, hey, you're overthinking that age thing. It's not that big of a deal. It absolutely fucking is. Because you got to layer in, why is he in this draft and going to be a 26-year-old rookie? Because of all the fucking injury history that he has. It's expansive. It's extensive. Furthermore, you talk about a guy at almost 26 years of age. He finally put together a really good season in college at age 25 when he's going up against a bunch of 19, 20, 21, maybe 22-year-old kids. Yeah, he better look fucking elite, and he still didn't look fucking elite. But now you're expecting me to believe that he's going to come in right away and he's going to look outstanding. That feels like a huge stretch to me. Like, he certainly could, but yeah, I'm not buying it, right? Like, he still had accuracy issues. There's moments where he gets kind of scattered. Like, I understand the appeal of the physical tools and the physical upside or the perceived physical upside here, but at pick 40, man, like, wow. Figured somebody was going to take him high. I just was surprised that they did, but they're probably thankful that they did at this point. But as I look at other picks in this draft, like Broughton felt like a slight reach, the defensive tackle from Texas in round 3. Jonas Sanko, the safety from Virginia, I thought that was a solid pick, about appropriate range. Danny Stutzman, the linebacker from Oklahoma in round 4, he was a little bit of a value pick, borderline steal. And then getting somebody like Devin Neal, the running back from Kansas in round 6, I thought he was more of like a round 4 type of talent. So got to give props where props are due. You get a round 4 type of talent a couple of rounds later, that goes into the steal category. Certainly should be some opportunities for him to produce and perform in 2025. But you look at the Saints team, like what's the identity? What's the direction coming out of this draft? And you just really don't see it. What are they supposed to be good at? What are they supposed to be about? I just don't see it. So I gave him a grade of like C- for this performance. Next up was the Atlanta Falcons. And I will say this. The Falcons knew their defense stunk. So they came into this draft with a clear priority to address certain areas of their defense because they knew it stunk. And I like that. Like, when you have an issue, go address it until you solve it. Don't half-ass it. However, you also just drafted Michael Penix Jr. last year with pick 8. He's going to be your guy this year. When in doubt, you have to continue to build around him and help and support him. And you might say to yourself, well, you have a Drake London there and a Kyle Pitts there and a Bijan Robinson there. How much more are you going to invest? Yeah, I'm not saying that it was wrong for them to take a defensive player in round one. I'm saying at some point in time you probably wanted to sprinkle in a offensive player here or there before you got to round fucking 7. Now, in terms of what the Falcons did do, Jalen Walker at 15, like he was one of the most intriguing, high talent, high upside guys in this draft class, and for the Falcons to just kind of sit there and have him fall into their laps as 15 was fantastic. And then they peel back up aggressively to 26, trade with the Rams to go get James Pierce, the edge rusher from Tennessee. And this is one of these situations where you kind of view James Pierce as like a top 10 to 15 talent. He's there at 26. Certainly is a guy in that draft range that is worth going up and getting. But if you're the Falcons, you say, you got to ask yourself, is it worth trading up that much for another edge rusher when you just took one at 15? Now you're giving away a first-round pick next year. Is that really going to pay off? Ugh. Now, if it does, and like if the Falcons win the division and Pierce has a contributing role in that, then you're probably okay with losing the first-round pick next year. But as a general rule, you don't want to get in the business of making those types of deals, when you're not talking about moving way up to the top of a draft or ending up moving up for a quarterback. So I thought it was a really, really big price to pay. Middle of the draft, they focused on safety clearly by taking Xavier Watts from Notre Dame and Billy Bowman from Oklahoma. So like in a bubble, if you told me that before the draft, like rounds 1 through 4, the picks were going to flow this way and there was no trades or anything else, and the Falcons would just get all these guys, I'd be like, damn, that was a really good draft class. But I would still have the same knock about, don't you need to address something on the offense? Secondary receiver, offensive tackle to eventually take Jake Matthews' spot. Something. You know what I mean? Like, it felt like they could have addressed offense at some point in time. But I assume Jalen Walker and James Pierce are going to help kind of change that defense a little bit. Xavier Watts and Billy Bowman, at least one of them will start. Both of them have a chance to start and contribute heavily, at least in the future. But overall, like, only 5 picks, 4 of them on defense, giving up a first-round pick next year. I'll give them something like a C. And then you've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And this to me, like if I look at day 1 compared to day 2, it's a very striking difference. Round 1, they take Emeka Egbuka at pick 19. Now fundamentally in and of itself, I didn't feel like that was a huge reach or anything like that. Like it was the type of guy, I thought Egbuka was going to go somewhere around like 20 to 32, maybe the very top of round 2. Depending on how teams viewed him as a prospect. So the draft range doesn't throw you off, but it's the Tampa. You still have Mike Evans, who you assume is going to give you another 2 or 3 years of pretty high-level production. You just gave Chris Godwin big money in free agency. Didn't you just draft Jalen McMillan pretty high? Like, why are you now layering on a first-round wide receiver into this mix? I don't get that. I thought, to me, in the immediate moment at least, it was one of the absolute worst picks of round 1. Now you can sit there and say, well, that's kind of hypocritical. It's best player available. But over the next year or two, how much is he going to really contribute? And if you say, well, he has a chance to contribute because of Chris Godwin's injury history, then you would say, why the fuck did you re-sign Chris Godwin? You get what I'm saying? Like if Egbuka has a pretty big role in 2025 or 2026, something really went wrong, which makes you question why did they have those other guys signed to that big money deals. So I thought it was a terrible first round pick in the current circumstances. But then I looked at day 2 and I really liked it. They needed to address the secondary and they took a couple of guys that I think certainly can contribute. And you look at Benjamin Morrison, the corner from Notre Dame at pick 53. Like this is a guy, if healthy, is a round 1 pick most likely. And you get him in the back half of round 2. And then Jacob Parrish from Kansas State's another guy that I envision is going to have some ability to contribute. I don't see why he wouldn't. And he could be a starter down the road. So yeah, like I look at Egbuka long term and I say that was a pretty solid pick. But I look at, in the moment I'm like, ugh. But I love the picks of Morrison and Parrish. I'm assuming at least one of David Walker and Elijah Roberts is going to fit into that edge rusher rotation, which I badly needed. But, to me, it's just hard to get over the first round rule. So I kind of split the difference here with the Bucks, and I give them a grade of a C. But I think the team that did the best in this division in terms of the draft to me was the Carolina Panthers. You know, as far as taking Tedero and McMillan in pick 8, did I think that was maybe a little high? Yeah. Is it also like, hey, you had a huge need there and your priority is still to build around Bryce Young, so that's what the fuck you should do, and therefore makes it a sound draft strategy? Absolutely. I guess as a team coming in knowing they needed to fix their defense badly, but you know, if you felt like you got a number one wide receiver type, that's something you badly needed in that passing game in Carolina around Bryce Young, then that's what you go fucking do. You go get that guy. And they did. And I think it works out for them when you look at the guys and the talent that they got a little bit later on in the draft, like Nick Scourton, the edge rusher from Texas A&M, getting him later portion of round 2, borderline round 1 type of talent. Princely Umanmielen, like another edge rusher that had plenty of thought around him being a late round 1, early round 2 guy, and you're getting him instead at pick 77. You know, these are real value picks addressing edge rusher, which is a position that you badly needed some help at. And then, you draft other guys in round 4, such as Trevor Etienne, who's going to be a Chuba Hubbard complement in that running game, and then Lathan Ransom from Ohio State, I think, has a chance long-term to be a starter for them at safety. Like, this was a really good performance for the Carolina Panthers. Like I said, I'm not as sure about the McMillan pick. It maybe should have been a Colston Loveland or a Tyler Warren, in my opinion. But nonetheless, they made the pick, and at least they were still trying to work around building around Bryce Young. But I thought this was the best performance of this division by far. I gave them a grade of like a C plus or a B minus. This is a team that added some valuable talent to their mix.